This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 405 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's start into 2022. And with that, Happy New Year to all our listeners. And of course to you, Matthias Zug, who's here to join me to start yet another year of madness, insanity, chaos, and hopefully a couple of good moments, maybe some trophies. Matthias, how are you doing?
Well, Happy New Year to you, Stefan. I am doing well. I'm sipping coffee and talking Borussia Dortmund. So things are looking up.
Yeah, may I wish you a happy belated birthday since it was just yesterday?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's the last we're going to talk about it because no one needs to know how old I am. Let's just say I'm younger than Marco Rosa, okay?
Well, I'm not entirely sure what your wife gave you for your birthday. I saw it was some sort of alcoholic beverage, but
yes,
if she had any
very
German
good Irish
humor,
whiskey.
it'd be Schnaps because you have aged into a Schnapszahl.
She did actually consider that, but I'm not a schnapps drinker.
Yeah,
so very good Irish whiskey was a significantly better and safer choice.
Fair enough. So, Matthias, obviously everyone knows that you've turned 66 years old now, and we'll just leave it at that. But more importantly, we have not new season, but a new year, a start into this a year to discuss. Borussia Dortmund had 3 weeks off, and we gained 2 COVID cases, which is not ideal, but I feel like with the Omicron variant out there, this is going to be the story of the next, I don't know how many months. Bayern Munich obviously are struggling with it right now, but since we are both in the US, we've seen it go around in the NFL, NHL, and NBA very prominently, and boatloads of players have been sidelined by testing positive, and I assume the same will be true for German football. Right now it's Zagadou and Marius Wolf who have to quarantine. Zagadou, I think, had to quarantine in a hotel room in Dubai where he got it, and I don't know if I've seen some reactions of people that got a little bit mad, I think I heard arrogance and privilege being dropped, that people considering, the pandemic is like on a new high, that footballers think it's a good idea to travel. And I kind of agree with that a little bit, Matthias. I don't think you should expose yourself to unnecessary risk. But then again, it would be a bit hypocritical because I do spend Christmas with family members. And we all did a little rapid test before a meeting, but nevertheless, these things can also be false negatives, and then you give your entire family the plague. So, Matthias, any thoughts on those 2 cases and Zagadou's in particular, or should we just move on?
No, I think people just need to calm down. I mean, whether he goes to Dubai or you go to the supermarket, right now, I had COVID back in October. Obviously, that was the Delta variant. And, I am fully vaccinated, boosted, whatever, everything. And it's just, shit happens. And, he could have gotten it also just, getting some gummy bears at Rewe, for all I know. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's anybody's place to then get all angry and say, oh, that's arrogant privilege. It's like, whatever. I mean, it's impacting all of us. It's impacting everybody. It's kind of like, if you haven't had COVID yet, probably going to get it now. And or even, I mean, I know plenty of people that it's their second round, and despite also being vaccinated and taking all the precautions. So, it's just the world and wave we're dealing with right now. And so I don't think we need to go after the guy for catching it while he was in Dubai necessarily. Again, people are getting it going to the supermarket. So it's just the way it is right now.
Yeah, I suppose so. So, Matthias, there are obviously also some good news, some long-term injuries coming to a conclusion, if you will. Gio Reyna is back in training, and I'm not entirely sure what Rose said, but I've read that he might be in the matchday squad, meaning he could, feature as a substitute in the latter stages of the game. Matteo Morey is back in training, which is also very positive after his very gruesome injury. I don't think he'll be an option anytime soon, but nevertheless, it's good for him to just be there. And I think the other thing that's positive, apart from that, is of course, and I nearly forgot to mention Moukoko, who also had injury struggles last year up to no end, and he's back in training as well. But I feel like what this team needed very much also was a mental break, because I know I needed it, as people have maybe searched for another episode after the Hertha game, but I was just too defeated. I was mentally broken. I did not want to concern myself with Borussia Dortmund or black and yellow or anything of that matter at all after that game. That to me was just a punch too heavy in the gut, even though if you look at the points table, basically, Dortmund are in second place and 34 points. I think a good result, has you on track for 68 points, which should be enough to qualify for the Champions League. But it's just, the way it all unfurled. I think the team suffered a big psychological blow with a defeat to Bayern Munich. And even though I think the performance in Bochum was still really good and they were really unfortunate, but these two events maybe combined then led to what happened against Fürth and then Hertha Berlin. Obviously, Fürth was a 3-0 win and the second Bundesliga clean sheet of the season, but nevertheless, you saw players arguing and bickering among each other and just real frustration coming out on the field. And against Hertha, it was just a really ugly game where Dortmund even did take the lead, albeit that Hertha might as well have taken the lead considering the defensive cock-ups that Dortmund have had previously. But nevertheless, Julian Brandt with a really nice goal, and then he basically plays the ball 3 times directly to the opponent. And the makeshift backline minus Hummels, who I think had a flu, and minus Akanji, who obviously had his knee surgery, really looked lackluster. And, conceding 3 goals against what was to that date, I think, the second worst attack of the Bundesliga, just kind of broke me, because Hertha Berlin, I've seen them too many times that I care to admit, but every time I've seen them this season, I thought they were just horrible, and conceding 3 goals against this team was just enough for me to completely shut down. And we've praised, I think, Erling Haaland a lot for really taking the team by the scruff of its neck and being someone who goes forward with the body language and always tries to win. But even he was so out of sorts and frustrated with the entire situation that people were already speculating whether this was literally the last game for him in a Dortmund shirt, which obviously, it's not. But I thought this game and the whole vibe going out of 2021 was just so darn negative, even though it wasn't all bad. But it just left you with a sour taste in your mouth. And obviously now the next game is against Eintracht Frankfurt, which even if you were full of momentum and everything is going the right way for you, this is a very tough matchup, because I think Dortmund haven't won in 7 attempts in Frankfurt, and Frankfurt I think have been undefeated in 26 out of their last 27 home games. And Frankfurt also probably the hottest team leaving 2021. So, Matthias, where are Borussia Dortmund at going into 2022? What are your hopes and dreams for this year, and more immediate for this Saturday, which is the Bundesliga Topspiel?
Geez, dreams and hopes for the year. Wow, that's a big one.
Well, we got to discuss both.
I mean, if I look at the macro picture of this season, the completion of the season for Borussia Dortmund, my hope and dream is honestly, I would love for Dortmund to win the Europa League. You know, it's like that the one European trophy that they haven't won, and I really hope they go for it. To be honest, I would love. I know Dortmund kind of ish was eyeing it under Tuchel, but then Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool happened. Even though I think no matter who, I think they lost to Sevilla.
Yeah, I was just going to say also Sevilla happened.
Yeah. No, I mean Sevilla would have. I think. Well, I don't know if Sevilla would have beaten Dortmund, to be honest, at that time. But be that as it may, I that's one I would hope, and another DFB Pokal win would be great as well. If you can end the season with one or both of those trophies, then it's a huge success. It's a successful season. I believe Dortmund will finish in the top 4. I don't doubt that. I still have a hope for a little bit of a title challenge, but that's just going to be very, very difficult. Now at a 9-point gap, even though I think Bayern will drop points.
Well,
I don't
so will
know.
Dortmund.
So will Dortmund. Everyone's going to drop points because it's just going to be another messy season. Could Dortmund then rattle off a series like they did under Terzic for the last 2-3 months of the season? Absolutely, they can. And if things hit right at that time, who knows what can happen. But a top 4 finish, I absolutely believe will happen. I believe that even last season when Dortmund were not in the top 4 at this point in time, I was like, yeah, they're going to finish in the Champions League spot. And they did. They finished in 3rd, and had that momentum kicked in a few weeks earlier, they probably would have finished 2nd. Be that as it may, for the immediate hope against Eintracht Frankfurt is, obviously the hope is always a win. I like Eintracht Frankfurt. I have a lot of sympathies for that club in that region. It's going to be difficult. Frankfurt, of course, had a very bad start to the season under Oliver Glasner, but they definitely caught themselves and are doing much, much better. And I'm sure Adi Hütter wishes he had not gone to Borussia Mönchengladbach at this point. And I'm pretty sure VfL Wolfsburg wishes that Glasner had not left a Champions League Wolfsburg side for a Europa League Frankfurt side, which says so much about both clubs. So it's going to be difficult. Oliver Glasner at Wolfsburg gave Dortmund a hard time previously, but Dortmund always somehow found a way because it's against Wolfsburg, and somehow Dortmund always find a way against Wolfsburg. Frankfurt, a little bit different beast. I don't know what the rules are in Hessen right now in terms of fans in the stadium.
There
yes
are
or
not going
no?
to be any.
Not
Berlin
any.
is the only
That's
place
right.
where there will be fans.
That's right. So that actually plays to Dortmund's favor, in my opinion. It's going to be difficult. I mean, the winter break came at a good time for Dortmund and honestly a bad time for Frankfurt because they had built up such a head of a momentum. To pick that up again after a 3-week break is always a little bit harder. To dust yourself off after a slump after a winter break is easier, in my opinion, just because you've got some healthy legs coming back, and the coaching team actually had time now to sit down and properly analyze without interruption, without having to prepare for the next match for 3 weeks. And Marco Rose today in the press conference alluded to that fact, that they had time finally. This was their biggest thing. They had time to sit down and really go over everything. And hopefully and ideally, they have spotted a lot of the issues at a deeper level than what we are looking at from the outside in, because, of course, they have the conversations with the players every day and see them in training every day, to get rid of the inconsistencies in concentration. That was the big theme for Marco Rose in the press conference today, because, of course, people talked about the much maligned backline, which I don't think you should judge Dortmund's defense on the backline that was thrown at Hertha, because that wasn't one. Let's be. It just wasn't. I mean, you had one player in that backline and I'm throwing Marvin Hitz. So 5 of the 5 defensive players, only Meunier was one that would be a regular starter. And then you had,
and that's
a midfield
already
player.
Sketchy.
Yeah, and you had no, I think he's actually very improved and having a good season.
That's true.
But then you have to, it's either Witzel or Can in central defense. They picked Witzel. And it's just, yeah, I mean, you can work on all the concentration, all that kind of stuff, but if you have so many injuries that you're throwing that as a backline together, all the other crap just doesn't matter because you're just trying to survive the day. Bayern, I sympathize for players that are dealing with injuries or are out with COVID, whether they're symptomatic or not. It's not fun, but I have zero sympathies for Bayern in dealing with a crisis of personnel. I just don't. I just really don't. So with Borussia Dortmund now, hopefully they'll be able to find some form. It is unfortunate that Zagadou and Akanji are both missing, because you're going to have Hummels and Pongracic. Pongracic, who I thought the first time he showed up for Dortmund did well, and it's really been downhill since then. But it's a lot better than the alternative of Axel Witzel or Emre Can next to Hummels. Because then Hummels is going to make...
So far, you've gone to...
Yeah,
pronounce the Po in Pongracic because he's ass, and then the Witzer in Witzel because he's a joke. Yeah. I don't know if your mind is playing tricks on you, but I see what's going on here, Matthias.
Yeah, it's my hope is just, let's get a draw out of this. My hope is a win. A draw, I think, would be a good result, especially because Dortmund is still coming back from injuries. So that's where I'm hoping for. And Frankfurt are, they do lay eggs. So it's not like Dortmund will be without a chance, especially because they do have Marco Reus and Erling Haaland in there. Marco Reus having a great season so far, and Haaland is just, it's Erling Haaland.
Right. Yeah, well, if I may start with my macro hopes and dreams for this year, like, obviously, winning the DFB Pokal and the Europa League are nice things. And in that particular way, I totally agree with you. However, really, my hope and dream is, and that's something, I don't know, for some reason it just sort of clicked in my head, and I feel like I would love the entire strategy going forward to be make the defense your highest priority and try to not leak as many goals, and see what needs to be done to address that issue. Because if you look at the goals against this season alone, Dortmund are the 8th worst, tied with 4 other teams, as they have conceded 26 goals. So if you want their the 11th best defense, if you count it from the other way, that's obviously not good enough for a team like Borussia Dortmund. I mean, they are among Hoffenheim, Bochum, and Augsburg, when it comes to teams that have conceded 26 goals. And that's just not good enough, and to me, the number one thing that needs to be addressed. Now, obviously, there are several aspects to good defending. One, obviously, is personnel. And I think that's something that obviously needs to be addressed, next summer. And there are no easy fixes just of yet. I mean, well, maybe drop the name Nico Schlotterbeck at some point, but I do think that, you have to add a couple more defenders. But at the same time, I also think that your defensive midfield also needs some upgrading. But all that being said, it's obviously more about the cohesion you have as an entire unit that really makes the difference, and whether the entire team presses and knows when to press and how to press, because Marco Rose said unequivocally today that he wants his team to press higher and more, with more intensity. So, there are obviously several routes to approach, trying to defend better. One is to sit very deep, have deep blocks, and, apply a very low midfield press, or even more just set traps and then be even more passive, as we've seen under Lucien Favre, for example, for stretches. And the other route is obviously to counter press as soon as you lose the ball and, rain hell on your opponent whenever you don't have the ball, and play with some real intensity. And hope you get the ball before the opponent outplays your pressing. Otherwise, you're going to be wide open, as we have seen impressively under Peter Bosch, for example, but obviously also in the Klopp time. But all that being said, I really just want Dortmund to pick one. And I think Rose is right in saying that, it suits Borussia Dortmund better to take the latter one, to take the more aggressive route, to have a good counter-pressing, because when you're a team of Borussia Dortmund's caliber, on paper in the Bundesliga, you will always be in second place, and that means against 16 other teams, you should be, either at one level or the better team. So that means you will have a lot of possession anyway. And in that regard, it just makes sense to apply a good counter pressing, because you would be trying to win back possession high up the field. So I think this is something that needs to be worked on. And I think Rose has said this is something he wants to work on. Now, the only question is if they still have success given the personnel they have, and obviously, all this, the personal problems, because I think if you want to apply a very aggressive style of play, you need some consistency of players. Obviously, in the later stages, when you have achieved it with your best 11, you obviously want it to function on a level that you can slot other players in and out, and it still works the same way. But Dortmund are a far cry away from that. So, this is basically my number one issue. I want Dortmund to really cut down on goals conceding. I don't really care about their offensive swagger just now, to be honest. Obviously, scoring goals is nice and sort of the point of the game and why we all watch. But if Dortmund can concede, say, 10 fewer goals a season or 20, that's sort of my main thing I want to see change, and where I want most of the brain trust to go in, if that makes sense. And obviously the other thing I want out of this season is actually not Dortmund related, it's Frankfurt related, because if I look at the table as of now, it's nice to see Freiburg and Leverkusen there, but Hoffenheim are also around. And I think of all these teams, Frankfurt actually has the best shot to qualify for the Champions League football and do something cool with it. And also one of those teams or clubs that I want to establish themselves as a bit of a, Champions League team, more of a regular, since, I've recently talked with a friend about it, the old traditional clubs that were in the Champions League, so like Schalke or Bremen, etc. They are all in the second division now, or Hamburg. So we need other traditional clubs, big clubs, to fill that void. And so far it's been Leipzig, Wolfsburg, and sometimes even Hoffenheim, who have qualified in the top 4, and it's just not to my liking. And I can also do very much without Leverkusen, if I'm perfectly honest. So if we get teams like, say, Frankfurt or Cologne or whatnot to fill that void. That would be very cool. And to make it back to Saturday's game, I actually wrote down some notes as I watched the Frankfurt games at the end of last year. It's a bit like finding a fiver in your winter jacket once you get it out of the closet again. And what I wrote down in very, very general terms is they press collectively, they create compactness, they help each other out, they play hard 1-3-11, they play physical, they read the game well in order to avoid unnecessary risk, and they are cheeky with attempts from range. So these are just a couple of general observations I had about Frankfurt, and I feel like a lot of things I've just listed there are things that are missing from Dortmund so far this season. So Matthias, obviously I think they will be without Lindström because of COVID, but Frankfurt are a team that have found their swagger nevertheless once they had this very lucky win away to Greuther Fürth, and more on that on a second. But what kind of game do you expect if Frankfurt can indeed conserve the form they showed toward the end of the year?
Well, I think the theme's going to be intensity. Counterattacks, defensive solidity, toughness, robustness. I'm not going to say dirtiness, but robustness. Glasnow's Wolfsburg was the same way. They didn't shy away from a crunching tackle. That's Dortmund aren't a physical team. That is one way to counteract Dortmund, is to be physical. And with Dortmund not having a Thomas Delaney as an example, that's just one less that type of player. Whereas I see players like Guerrero. I think Guerrero was a very soft player, personally. He both physically and mentally, I think he's softer. Whereas an Emre Can, Dahoud, Meunier, Reus, also Haaland, they're not soft players. I think Torgan Hazard is a softer player. He's a good presser, but he's not a physical player. Julian Brandt is not a physical player. Gio Reyna is not a physical player. So that's where the Bellinghams, the Johns, the Dahouds, Reus, Haaland, and so on, they come in and they need to do the job because, again, the other ones simply won't. It's not in their DNA. They're not going to do it. Now, the one area that Dortmund just need to make sure that they're tight on is Dortmund's right side, because that is Frankfurt's left side. And anybody who watches 5 minutes of Eintracht Frankfurt knows that a lot of their danger comes in the form of one player on the left side by the name of Filip Kostic, who has haunted Dortmund in the past when he played for Hamburg as well. So I'm glad he's not on Dortmund's left side, because I think he would wreck Guerrero. He would absolutely wreck him. I have a little bit more hope for Thomas Meunier, because Meunier actually can play defensively, can be a little bit more robust. It can break down a little bit. Obviously, he's not a playmaker. He's not to that level. But Kostic does leave space behind him, which is an area to exploit. But in an attacking sense, so much of Frankfurt's momentum comes through Filip Kostic. I mean, it is the name that gets said, I feel, just over and over and over again for Eintracht Frankfurt. And so them not having Lindström, who really has come on strong towards the end of the Hinrunde, I think that does hurt Frankfurt and helps Dortmund a little bit. If they can shut down or at least contain Filip Kostic, I think that will be a key battle, a key area for Dortmund to kind of figure things out. How they set up, that's again the danger if they're going to go with a 4-4-2 diamond. Then Meunier is one-on-one with Kostic virtually the entire match. If they shift to a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 and they play a little bit wider and you double up on the wingbacks, then I think Dortmund can have a very good day.
Yeah, I think Dortmund needs to solve the Kostic problem collectively, because that is the only way. You have to treat it like peak Dortmund dealt with Iron Robben, where you not have just Schmelzer deal with him, but you have Großkreuz there too, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And, Frankfurt do have some personnel woes. I mean, Da Costa is out too, so that I think is going to be a bit of a problem. If I'm also not mistaken, one of their most influential players this season is out. It's Jakic, who is, I don't know who's he on loan from. I think from Dinamo Zagreb or so, but he and Dibrilso in their midfield to build the double pivot have been really great, and I feel like, with Jakic really finding his groove, a lot of things changed for Frankfurt as well, because I think in recent years, Frankfurt's brand of football was, if you want to call it that, smash mouth football. And I feel like under Glasner in the first couple of months, they've lost it a little bit. Also trying to go back to back four, because it's sort of Glasner's preferred system. Didn't really help them, but I think he's ditched that. And it's funny that the first 10 games of Frankfurt, they've only won a single one, and that one win came against Bayern, which was a bit lucky, but nevertheless, I think they take it. And then in the last 7 games, they won 6 out of 7. And I think they had a loss against Hoffenheim. And what's interesting about these two periods, if you will, is that, they scored only 10 goals in the first 10 games. And, I think they accumulated an expected goals of 11.9 according to FBref. And in the last 7 games, they scored 17 goals while accumulating an XG total of 11.8. So almost matching that accumulation of the first 10 and overachieving their XG by 5.2. So what that tells me is obviously, you can say they gotten a little bit luckier, but it's also just a little bit of more confidence and flow coming back to this team. And in that regard, it's unfortunate that Lindström is out, because he, I think, scored the 4 goals that he had in the final 5 or 6 games. I think he opened his scoring account finally in Freiburg, which was a very prominent win for Frankfurt. So it's not all great for Frankfurt either coming into this game. But I still do think that Dortmund really will miss Akanji. I think that much is clear. I'm really glad that he's not out for that much longer, to be honest. But still a very hurtful absence. And it's also good to finally find out that what his surgery was some sort of meniscus surgery. I personally didn't hear that before this week. So, at least that shouldn't take him out for a very long time. And I think he's going to be back soon. And I think those 3 games without him really have shown how much Dortmund miss him and how vital he is. But yeah, back to the Frankfurt point is that I agree with you. I think Kostic is obviously their main source of creation, but I also wouldn't sleep on Kamada, to be honest, because I think he is a very intelligent player as well, and he is not one that gives the ball away cheaply, like say Julian Brandt against Hertha, and he can play a very mean through ball. So shutting down just the left side of Frankfurt, I don't think is going to be enough. But more importantly, I think we've already spoken about it, is that Frankfurt just hit you in the mouth right away. And they're relentless. They don't stop for the 90 minutes. That I think is the most impressive thing, that they managed to, sort of close out the Hinrunde of the season and, really play harsh attacking football and really, bring pain to opponents while also qualifying on top of their Europa League group, which is not easy. And so they deserve a lot of respect that they haven't just turned their season around in the Bundesliga, but at the same time managed to have some success in Europe. So that's, to me, very impressive. And I really hope after losing to Dortmund again, that they play a very good season. So there's that. Matthias, do you think that the reintroduction of A, having Jude Bellingham back in the lineup, and B, hitting the reset button on also players like Haaland, who silly, he looked a bit discontent there against Hertha. Do you think that this will sort of help Dortmund come out of the gate swinging? And on top of that, I might just ask, how do you think Dortmund should replace Akanji in the backline? Should it be Pongracic? Should it be Can? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's kind of got to be Pongracic. I mean, at least he's a learned central defender. He's the key thing is make sure he's on the right side, not on the left side. Make sure Hummels plays on the left side. And then I think, obviously you don't play Witzel. I think that's obvious. Emre Can, I love Emre Can. I mean, he's kind of a psycho, and I enjoy that about him. But that's not exactly what you want from a central defender. I think Pongracic would be is the better option. It really is the only option, in my opinion. Being next to Hummels, he won't be asked to really be the fulcrum of build-up play. What will aid Hummels on his side is the fact that you'll have Guerreiro there, which obviously is a huge part of build-up play for Dortmund. And then with Pongracic also being faster than Hummels, on the Kostic side, I think would be beneficial. Obviously, if he struggles, then you make the change. And it's Can or nobody. But for me, the bigger issue is shutting down Frankfurt earlier. And that is, controlling those half spaces where Kamada and previously Lindström, Kamada flourishes, and the Kostic side. So for me, the way you do that, you already mentioned, Großkreuz and Schmelzer. So the way you would do it is Meunier and Reus. I think if you put Azad or Daniel Mahlen on that side, Meunier may as well be playing alone. Hazard a little bit less, but Daniel Mahlen definitely, and so you'd be doing no favors. That does naturally create an overload on the other side for Frankfurt to look at, but if Frankfurt's other wingback is Timothy Chandler, I'm willing to take that risk.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have to play the numbers and the odds. That's just how it works in any sport. You will try to leave the one player open that's likely to cause the least harm. And obviously, every now and then, even those players have a great game and screw over whatever you had planned. This happens, but I think you're right here. And one more point I wanted to make sort of our listeners aware if they're not already, which I think most of them are anyway. But I'm really intrigued to see Mats Hummels' form this year. Because traditionally, Mats Hummels, after World Cups or Euros or any sort of international tournament, has dropped off in form severely. That's not new. That's not exclusively this season. That's always been the case. I still remember a quote for Jürgen Klopp that jokingly we all had to wait for Mats Hummels to find the will to play football again, basically, and. Yeah. So my hope really...
Yeah, but that was also specific after the 2012 Euros when it's like the media decided and Löw decided that Hummels was to blame for that performance against Italy and basically didn't play him for a while. I think there was more at play than just the tournament.
It's true.
In his legs. I think there was the psychological knock-on effect from that match against Italy that played into it there as well. But your point is still the same.
Yeah, my point is that I think
way.
he is mentally fatigued after these tournaments, to be honest. I don't think the physical aspect of Mats Hummels is that prevalent, to be honest. I feel like he just needs more, head breaks, if you will.
Agreed. Absolutely.
And we've seen it after the World Cup too. I mean, it's just what it is right now. And so I do hope, even though it was a short break, and you never also know what goes on in the private lives of all these people, to be honest, and all these factors. But, just to analyze it as simply as possible, I just hope that the break did him a world of good. And, the issue he has with the patella tendon, to make it about a more physical aspect, also probably, a break only helps in that aspect too. So I really do hope that Mats Hummels can find to a better form now. And I also hope that Zagadou finds some form at some point this year, because I do think that there needs to be more rotation going on from at the back line, even though it's something you don't like to do, but I think it's necessary. And for that, you need proper options, and Dortmund don't have that right now. So, just in that regard, obviously. So, end of thought.
It was a very good thought, Stefan. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. Yeah, do you have any other thoughts, Matthias?
Well, I mean, the fact that Lindstrom isn't playing is actually a big deal, because if you, as good as Frankfurt have been playing, their depth is an issue when it comes to quality. I mean, if I just look back at the match against Mainz, who came on for Kamada and Lindstrom, it was Ache and Ilsanker. Ache coming in from the Eredivisie. I think he played for Sparta Rotterdam. Still kind of wait and see what comes of him. He's still a very young player, but so far I haven't been impressed. And Ilsanker is Ilsanker. He's okay, but he's not going to be a quality improvement. So it'll be curious to see how they decide to do that. Maybe they draw Borré further back, or bring in Paciencia. Paciencia is also kind of okay. So that's really where things tend to break down for Frankfurt. Now, where their strengths are, you'd already mentioned it. Rode, So, and a very good, very experienced backline of Hinteregger, Hasebe, Ndika, and Trapp. And so that's going to be the interesting thing, because you're looking at a core there. If we just look at those 5 defensive players, ignoring Kevin Trapp right now, Dortmund really love to go through the center. And if you're looking at this, you're like, that's probably not the best place to try to go through Frankfurt, is through the middle. I think exploiting positions behind Kostic, and, if on the other side you're facing Timothy Chandler, who I just don't think is that good of a player, I think that's really where Dortmund, they need to stretch this game. They need to stretch Eintracht Frankfurt, in Eintracht Frankfurt's defensive third. If they don't do that, if they try to force small, intricate, central passes, they won't get through. This will not end well for Dortmund. If they can stretch them at pace, because Hinteregger and Hasebe are not exactly pacey players, then I think Dortmund can do really well. So it'll be very interesting to see what formation Marco Rose picks, and how those players decide to play. If you're going to play with people out on the wings who all constantly want to cut inside, then you're not going to achieve your need for stretching it, because on the left-hand side, you also have Guerrero, and what does Guerrero love to do? He tucks inside, he tucks centrally, and play makes from there. That's going to be difficult when you're facing that core of 5 more defensive, physical, robust, well-disciplined, well-positioned players that are going to knock the crap out of you. That's, I think, will be an interesting thing to watch, because Dortmund, it doesn't really matter who the coach is. We can go back to Tuchel, where Dortmund constantly try to feed things right through the middle, and when the opponent sits tight centrally, it tends to break down. Dortmund have all the possession in the world. They have 70%. I expect them to have high possession numbers against Eintracht Frankfurt. But if you're getting 60 to 70% possession and 5 shots, then it just doesn't matter, especially if those shots aren't really that good. So that, for me, will be interesting. If they can stretch the play, that'll also open up positions for Erling Haaland. and Donny Malen and Marco Reus. But if they don't, then this could be a very long evening.
Yeah, but it's nice to have options late in the game. This is something I'm actually looking forward to, and I know Marco Rose is also not a coach that likes to substitute early, but now I think this can be a change, and maybe Dortmund are lucky and don't have a million bouts with COVID, and maybe they can spare a couple injuries, and Moukoko is back, Hazard is back, and obviously if you will, Malen is also back in the sense that he finally arrived, he found his scoring boots, and that gives Dortmund a lot of options also in the later stages of the game. And I think, especially in Frankfurt, that will be very important. What changes and adjustments can you make to sort of stem against their barrage of attacks in the last 20 minutes? How can you keep them busy around their own goal? Because I think that's very necessary. If Dortmund just sit back and let Kostic run, and just clear cross after cross, and then Frankfurt can just vacuum up all these second balls, it's not going to be pretty. Dortmund are not that kind of team that can defend and sustain that sort of pressure for a long time. So I just do really hope that they manage to push Frankfurt back, even though that means they're susceptible to counterattacks. I still have that scenario. I prefer that scenario over the other one I just described. So yeah, in that regard, I just really do hope that Dortmund add a bit of pizzazz late in the game. Now, obviously, you have no idea what kind of form and shape Moukoko is going to be in. Same counts for Reina, and but what we have to find out, we have to play these players and give them minutes and give them the chance to find back to their form, and I just pray that it goes well, basically. But at the same time, I'm also just excited to see all these players back, and really hope that, especially for Moukoko, that 2022 will be more of his year than 2021, especially the latter part. And for Gio Reyna, I think it counts the same. I think the expectation on Gio Reyna was really high, especially with the exit of Jadon Sancho, and he didn't quite last very long, I think, until the first international break. And the early glimpses this season of him obviously have been positive because he's a good player. And, sometimes I feel like he has been forgotten a bit, that he is also out when people sort of count through the numerous injuries that Dortmund sustained throughout the season. I think if he had been fit and healthy, Dortmund's attack would have had a much better flow and structure to it. So I do hope that now Rose can mold him into a much better player than he was at the beginning of 2021. And it's a lot to ask because he's still relatively young and he just came off a very long injury, and you have to be super careful because it was a muscular injury as well. But nevertheless, I think Gio Reyna should and must have a really good year now. And that's all I have to say about this. But the attacking options are there again. That's very good. And the fact that Dahoud is healthy again, that you have Can, you can play in midfield, you have Dahoud who can play in midfield, Brandt in general has an upswing in form unless he completely loses his focus. I think Dortmund right now are set up pretty well, minus the Akanji injury and not having Zagadou is obviously also not ideal, and Marius Wolf, could have been the curse of the X, if you will. So these are a couple of downers, but I assume, and maybe I'm completely wrong, that Erling Haaland will be a complete beast again after falling off a little, and I also think that Marco Reus's really good form will continue. So in that vein, I'm not completely pessimistic about Saturday's game, but it's going to be very difficult to win in Frankfurt. And if Dortmund pull it off, I'm going to be very happy because that completely kills the the sour taste in my mouth I had from the Hertha game, and it just is promising for this year. I feel like if Dortmund show a similar face they showed against Fürth and in Berlin, I'm just going to be even more grumpy, and that's not what we want, do we? So, Matthias, I think it's time for scoreline predictions, and since I've, talked myself into some optimism here, I'm just going to go first, and I'm going to say that Dortmund are going to win this 3-1. What is your prediction?
Well, I have also talked myself into optimism.
We never learned, do we?
No, never. Yeah, my gut is saying like a 2-2 draw, to be honest. But, the more we talk about it, the more you go into details of analysis. I'm going to be hopeful and say we're going to start 2022 off in a positive vein, and Dortmund will win this 2-1 with an Erling Haaland brace.
Yeah. I mean, when he scores, he rarely scores only once, right? Either you contain him fully or not at all, I feel like is what the theme about Erling Haaland is. So, why not? So, Matthias, we've teased it at the beginning a little bit, and it's a transfer window right now, and I regret to inform everyone that Roman Bürki is still an employee of Borussia Dortmund, which in itself is not bad. It's always good to have good keepers on board. He's by no way a bad keeper, but I think the future is clear. It's Gregor Kobels, and he obviously needs to leave to free up some salary space. I would make the same argument for Axel Witsel, who I think his time to leave Borussia Dortmund has come. I think there was a successful period, but that has come to a halt. And I don't think before these things happen, anything else really will happen. So, Matthias, I'll be honest, my optimism for either of those things happening is very, very low. I have not read a single credible rumor of either players leaving. I don't even think they're really trying hard to get rid of Witsel right now. And, Roman Bürki is also sort of in a holding pattern right now, where I think there was something with Saint-Etienne, but that went poof since they signed another keeper. So, Sebastian Kehl also said that don't expect much to happen in this winter break. I think the consequences of yet another COVID wave and no fans attending games and the loss of that revenue also plays yet another constraining factor. So, I don't really love talking about transfers because it bores me until it really happens. But I also don't think there's that much to talk about, to be quite frank. There are obviously players of interest like Zakaria. We've talked about him. Schlotterbeck, obviously, also really intriguing and a player I would absolutely love to see Dortmund sign, but I think it's rather going to happen in the summer than the winter. What's your take on all of this?
Well, I mean, if we just look at Transfermarkt, open that up as far as rumors about who could leave. Obviously, there's a crap ton of reports on there about Erling Haaland. That's to be expected, but he's not going anywhere until the summer because any team that is dumb enough to try to buy him now, well, God bless you. But as far as players leaving, it's a whole lot of Bürki and Witsel. A little bit of Bellingham, but he's not going anywhere right now. Renier about going back. Basically, Dortmund will be like, yeah, this is not going to work out. Real Madrid, you can have him back. We want to get out of this. One weird flyer in there, Stefan Tigges to Bochum, which I know Bochum wanted. No, Köln wanted him in the summer, actually. Maybe as a loan option. But I think, that's not going to happen right now because you can't just not have any strikers behind Haaland. And with Bürki, again, you said Saint-Etienne, that has fallen through. The other one is Karabakh, which I believe is Azerbaijan, if memory serves me correctly. Which
yes,
yeah, which so
Shinji Kagawa was a brace. I was there in the stands.
Yeah. And Witsel, the only rumors around him had been circulating were Juventus and Barcelona, which was just interesting choices. Juventus I could actually see. Barcelona would be an odd one. Be that as it may, it's not looking very positive there as far as players coming. You already mentioned them. You know, you look at likes of Zakaria, Adeyemi, Schlotterbeck, Yusuf Demir from Rapid Wien. These are all quality players, I think, that would benefit Dortmund. The only one of those that I can honestly see in the winter would be Dennis Zakaria, because he has said he's leaving Gladbach. He's not going to renew his contract. Max Eberl has confirmed that.
Neither is Ginter, by the way. Interesting.
Neither is Ginter, who is being linked with I forget who right now. No, I want to say
I've seen
he was.
it though. I've asked Lars in private what he would make of this transfer, and basically just said, "Fuck no."
No, I think he actually got linked with Juventus,
that makes more
which
sense.
that actually could work for both. As far as Zakaria, selling him now in the winter is the only chance Gladbach have to get any cash out of him. Gladbach are not going to qualify for Europe. I think we can assume that safely. So cashing in on him right now would make sense for Gladbach, who have a lost season. But it comes down to wage budgets. And I know, I see this kind of shit on Twitter all the time. We're like, whoa, but Dortmund sold Sancho for so much money. They should just buy more players. Dortmund lack ambition because they don't spend. This isn't the fucking Premier League, okay? And the fact that Dortmund are losing so much matchday revenue due to COVID, that's 20, 30, 40 million euros a season that they are losing right there. And that's not selling or buying players. That's just fans not attending. Is huge for Dortmund because that's not just ticket sales. That's concession stands and merchandise on match days. Steph and I have both been to Dortmund games. The fan shop is packed. And all of that goes away. And that's not 2 million. That's 20 to 40 million at a bare minimum that they lose through that.
Well, I mean, the good news is they're no longer making a major loss on, offering free ice creams to journalists, because I pounced on that very hard.
Yes, I've also had some free ice cream there before, and it's very yummy, and so did my son. But be that as it may, that all has to go into consideration. If you look at Bürki and especially Witsel, they're high salary players. Dortmund don't even care what they sell them for. I mean, they'd probably let them go for pennies. I mean, maybe even for free at this point, if they can just get rid of that wage constraint, and then you can afford to bring in Zakaria, because, and I had this debate, and this is really why I decided pre-Christmas, you know what, screw it, I'm just going to go on a Twitter hiatus until the new year, unless there would have been major news for Dortmund, because you get into these stupid arguments where people like, just spend. Like, yeah, if you've only been a fan of Dortmund's for like 8 years or 10 years, I remember 2005 very, very vividly. And so does Watzke and Raubal, who were there, and Kehl was there at that time, and Zama, who was around at that time. Like, this club cannot afford to do that kind of stuff because they need to be able to afford the future. Dortmund were in a so-called arms race with Bayern before, and it almost broke the club to the point where it didn't exist anymore. Don't ever do that again. I don't care if it means Bayern run away with the title. It's better that than you bankrupt the club again. So without Bürki and Witsel leaving, at least one of them, there's not going to be anybody coming right now in the winter. That's just not going to happen. Summer, totally different deal. Haaland's going to be gone. Bürki, Witsel are going to be gone by then. Again, I do believe Haaland's going to leave. This whole rumor about them being in intense conversations, maybe to up that release clause, but that's about it. I hope Bellingham stays. I can't say one way or another, to be perfectly honest. So the summer will look different, but right now in the winter, unless Buki and or Witzel leave, no one's coming in.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much what I said, to be honest. And it's kind of cute that Dortmund sort of want to sit down with Haaland and want a decision by February, which is nice, to have a clear sort of decision. Either he, stays or leaves, but, I'm not kidding myself about this, and friend asked me, we were talking about how it's difficult to root for players these days because, they're gonna be gone soon. But that being said, Haaland is going to be the best striker in the world in the foreseeable future, and he's a fantastic, spectacular player, and it's just very nice to have him on the team because he could have picked any other team to make the next step on his path to world glory, basically. And it's nice that it's Dortmund, and because that does two things. A, it makes Dortmund more fun to watch, and B, he's not going to Bayern because he's developed so well in Dortmund that I don't think Bayern can afford him. I think they've said it this much themselves, and to me that's a major relief, to be honest. So one thing I want to say is just try to enjoy it while it lasts, because it's going to end, and I think Dortmund will find a suitable replacement. Hopefully. I mean, they have a couple of duds too when it comes to the striker position, but in general, I want them to focus on the defense anyway, only to say that and then complain about the lack of attack in the post-Haaland era. But, being tormented by Robert Lewandowski in a Bayern shirt for I don't know how many years now is not nice. And so I appreciate not having that same, thing come again with Haaland's to haunt me. So I really hope that he's going to, I don't know, Real Madrid or so. That I think would be a good destination for him. And that's that. And I also would appreciate if a decision can be made public of where his destination actually is sooner rather than later, so we don't get a fucking push on our mobile phones about Erling Haaland's future every freaking day. That's another thing that'd be nice. So that's all I pretty much have to say on that subject. Obviously, If Dortmund could sign Zakaria and get rid of Witzel in midfield, that would make a major difference. Having some more robustness in midfield and someone that I think also just suits Rose's style or attempted style much better. That would be a major boost. But right now, I don't really see it happen, and it's going to be obviously difficult to make it happen, because getting rid of Axel Witzel in this economy is going to be hard as well. And I don't think that Barcelona are that quite stupid, to be honest. When we talk about Witzel, we also talked about the decision to join Dortmund. It was to be closer to his actual home, to be, closer to Belgium. And I don't see any more clubs in that sort of region that would have a serious interest in Witzel. So maybe something will come up and pop up, but my hopes for that are just very low, and I think the squad will just continue into the next year as is. That's my prediction right now. Maybe I'm wrong, and anything can happen in this business, but for now, I think Dortmund will just lay low, and that's it.
I agree.
All right.
Fortunately.
Yeah. I know. I feel like a couple of transfers here and there would add some excitement, spice things up, and you would also just feel like there's movement in the overall, in the macro planning of what Borussia Dortmund's face in future might or can be. But yeah, disappointingly, I don't think it's so. So with that, Matthias, I think we can also just knock it on the head here and, you know, do the outro unless you have any other New Year's resolutions you want to infer for Borussia Dortmund.
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, good. All right, then, Matthias, please tell our listeners where they can find your Twitter hiatus. Which is never really real. You just still scrolling.
I just didn't. Yeah, I didn't scroll anymore. I'll still occasionally say what I think, like crypto and NFTs, like bleh. Or wish people a happy new year. But it's the scrolling that just makes me want to throw up sometimes. But anyway, you can find me on Twitter at Matthias.
Very nice. You can find me at Stefan Butzko. You can follow all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to subscribe to this podcast, please do that via iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube, of course, etc. And yeah, I hope you all have an awesome 2022, and we're all looking forward to a bunch more episodes. Unless, of course, someone lose 6-3, then I think it's just going to fall apart, and there's not going to be a Yellowwallpod since I will completely be disintegrating. But I don't think that's going to happen. So, Matthias, once again, thank you for your time, and thanks for coming on yet again to discuss Borussia Dortmund with me. Was more fun than I anticipated going into this episode.
Yeah, I know. I was looking at our timeline, and I'm like, wow, we've had a lot to talk about, and none of it has been fluff.
Yeah, well, that sort of also lies in the ears of the beholder, if you will. But yeah, as always, everyone out there, thank you for listening. We shall be back next week with a review of the Frankfurt game, and I think a preview of the Freiburg game, if I'm not entirely wrong. And yeah, until then, goodbye.